Have you ever found something at school that nobody knew existed? For 15-year-old Sophie, it happened on an ordinary Monday morning. Sophie had recently moved to a small town in Colorado with her family. She was still getting used to her new school. The building was huge, the hallways were always crowded, and she still didn't know many people. One morning, Sophie arrived early. The school hallway was almost completely empty. As she walked toward her classroom, she noticed something strange. There was a blue locker at the very end of the hallway. It looked older than all the others. Sophie stopped. She looked at the locker number, 317. Something felt familiar about it. She checked the school map on her phone. There was no locker 317. In fact, the lockers only went up to 316. Sophie laughed. That's weird. She tried the handle. Locked. Then she noticed a tiny piece of paper stuck between the locker door and the wall. She pulled it out. There were only 4 words. You found it again. Sophie stared at the message. Again? She looked around. Nobody was there. She put the note in her backpack and went to class. All morning, she couldn't stop thinking about the mysterious locker. During lunch, Sophie asked her new friend, Ava, about it. Have you ever seen locker 317? Ava looked confused. What locker? Sophie explained. Ava shook her head. There is no 317. That's what I thought. After school, they went back to the hallway. The blue locker was still there. Sophie pointed at it. See? Ava looked surprised. I've walked through this hallway hundreds of times. I've never seen that before. They looked at the locker again. This time, something had changed. There was a small number written underneath the handle. 9 to 1421. Ava thought for a moment. Maybe it's a date. September 14th, 2021. Sophie searched the school's public website. That date was important. It was the day the school celebrated its 50th anniversary. Sophie looked at Ava. Maybe this locker has something to do with the school's history. They went to the library. The librarian helped them look through old yearbooks. After several minutes, Sophie found something strange. In a photograph from 2021, there was a student standing beside locker 317. The student was smiling. On the back of the photograph was a name, Mason Reed. Sophie searched the yearbook. Mason had been a student at the school. But there was something unusual. His photograph appeared only once. Ava asked the librarian about him. The librarian became quiet. Mason was a very creative student. What happened to him? He moved away with his family. Sophie looked at the photograph again. Did he have anything to do with locker 317? The librarian smiled. I don't know. Then she handed Sophie an old key. It was small and silver. This was found in the library years ago. Sophie looked at it. There was a tiny number engraved on it, 317. Ava's eyes widened. That's the locker number. They hurried back to the hallway. Sophie inserted the key. Click. The locker opened. Inside was a small notebook. Nothing else. The cover had one sentence. For the person who discovers this after me. Sophie opened it. The first page was written by Mason. He explained that he had discovered the locker by accident while helping the school clean an old storage area. He decided to turn it into a secret time capsule. He left notes, photographs, and small memories inside. But before he moved away, he wanted someone else to continue it. Sophie turned the page. There was a final message. If you're reading this, don't search for me. Instead, leave something for the next person. Sophie smiled. The mystery suddenly made sense. The locker wasn't hiding something dangerous. It was hiding memories. Sophie took a blank page. She wrote, My name is Sophie. I moved here this year and thought I wouldn't fit in. But I found this locker. And somehow, finding a mystery helped me feel like I belonged. Ava added her own message underneath. Then Sophie placed a small photograph of the two of them inside the notebook. They closed the locker. Before walking away, Sophie looked back. For the first time since moving to Colorado, the school didn't feel unfamiliar anymore. It felt like she had become part of its story. The next morning, Sophie returned to locker 317, but the locker was gone. She stared at the empty wall. Ava arrived a few seconds later. What happened? I don't know. They looked everywhere. There was no blue locker, no number 317, nothing. Sophie checked her backpack. The notebook was still there. But now there was a new sentence written on the last page. Neither Sophie nor Ava had written it. It said, "Thank you for continuing the story." Sophie smiled. Maybe the locker had never been about finding an object. Maybe it had always been about finding a connection. And somewhere in another school, another student might be looking at a strange blue locker for the very first time. So here's the question. If you discovered a secret school locker that wasn't supposed to exist, would you open it? And if you did, what would you leave inside for the next person?